It's finally time to talk about Spider-Man 2, my most anticipated game of 2023, and my most anticipated game of the entire PS5 lifecycle. For those of you that don't know, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. He is one of my favorite, if not my most favorite character of all time. So imagine how thrilled I was in 2018 when I found out we were getting a bona fide AAA Spider-Man game. And that game turned out to be a masterpiece. It turns out Insomniac Games really understands Spider-Man as a character, understands the story, and understands how the gameplay should feel in order to achieve that Spider-Man fantasy. The gameplay that was every fan's dream, paired with an original story from the game developers that puts even comic writers to shame. Spider-Man 2018 was a love letter to the character and every fan of the red and blue wall crawler. And now, it seems Insomniac Games has outdone themselves yet again and given us a worthy successor to Spider-Man 2018. So if you love Spider-Man and video games, stick around and let me tell you why you should buy Marvel's Spider-Man 2. One of the hardest things about being a great game developer is having to compete with yourself when you've already created a masterpiece of a game. Since Spider-Man 2018 came out, I've often been wondering how Insomniac was going to innovate off of the gameplay that we saw in that game and bring enough changes to Spider-Man 2 in order to justify the sequel. And while they didn't overhaul the gameplay in any major way, they made enough meaningful improvements to the combat, traversal, and gadget use that makes this feel like a worthy successor to Spider-Man 2018. The combat has more weight to it this time around. With certain attacks, you actually feel the impact of most of the attacks that both Miles and Peter use. The addition of special attacks or abilities similar to the ones that Miles had in his 2020 game definitely make combat less like a button masher and help to sometimes turn the tide of a hard encounter. Every one of those abilities is brutal in a different way, from the Venom Bomb that we get later in the game as Peter to Miles' Kamehameha lightning bolt attack. But my favorite attack by far in the game, and Jared's as well, is the move where you rapidly kick some dude in the groin when they're backed up against a wall. Like, come on, this shit will never not be fun. The game could take away every other attack, and I would still say this combat is better than 2018. The game also kind of pared down the gadgets from the first game. There's only 6 instead of 8 in Spider-Man 2, and they're shared between both Peter and Miles. But this time the gadgets are equipable to a quick slot menu, so you can use them just by holding down L1 and X, square, triangle, or the circle button. This definitely feels like a meaningful change, and despite having less in your arsenal than in the first game, it feels like the gadgets definitely make more of a difference in combat. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the verge of dying in a tough fight and being saved by a sonic burst or a web grabber. Also, sometimes random characters will show up and help you out in a combat encounter. Mostly it's Miles or Peter joining the fight when you're playing as the opposite Spider-Man, but there are a few others that turn up as well, so I won't spoil those for you, but there's more to the story there. Overall, the gameplay of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is an improvement on an already A-tier combat system. Instead of reinventing the wheel, Insomniac gave some well-implemented quality of life improvements to further immerse people in the power fantasy of being Spider-Man. A similar story can also be said for the web swinging in Spider-Man. A lot of people, myself included, felt that the web swinging in 2018 wasn't as fast as we felt it should be to further immerse ourselves into the Spider-Man fantasy. It often felt like a chore to swing through Manhattan, which for me at least, killed replayability value. So you'll be happy to know that web swinging in New York is much faster this time around. It takes almost no time at all to traverse not only Manhattan, but Brooklyn and Queens as well. And a lot of this is because Insomniac added web wings to each of the Spider-Men. And I just want to say that I am so happy that they added web wings to this game. If you told 7-year-old me that one day I'd be playing a Spider-Man game, not only with Venom in it, but one that has web wings that I can actually use and glide with, I would have shit my pants. The fast travel is also faster this time around. You just pick a spot where you want to go on the map, hold triangle for a few seconds, and you load in instantly. This is where the real power of the PS5 is in cutting down the load times so that they're almost instantaneous. No more riding on the subway for Spider-Man. The activities that we do around the city are also pretty similar in feel to the ones that we did in 2018. Lots of players still criticize Spider-Man 2 for having too many collectathon style side activities, just like 2018 did, but I really don't think it's that big of a deal. If anything, I'm glad Insomniac put more side content in the game because personally, I'm always down to unlock a new suit or find a random Easter egg somewhere in the open world. Speaking of the open world, New York feels more alive than ever here. As someone who doesn't live in New York but has been there several times, this feels like the most faithful recreation of the city that we've ever had in a video game. Before these new Spider-Man games came out, I'd have said that the most realistic fictional New York was GTA 4, but that's just me. I loved finally getting to see Queens in Brooklyn where Peter and Miles grew up. As someone who's grown up with these characters, getting to see them in their home neighborhoods where they grew up themselves, it felt like in a way that I was going home to, and it gave me that warm, fuzzy feeling inside that I used to get when I watched the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies as a kid. The new skill trees in the game function pretty much the same way as the ones from the previous games too. You have 3 separate skill trees this time for Miles, Peter, and then a shared skill tree for the 2 of them, which makes a lot of sense because the 2 of them are similar in ways, but they also have their own different unique combat styles, which are accounted for in each of their ability sets and each of their skill trees. And I feel like this does justice to both of the characters in setting them apart from each other, making them independent and distinct from one another, but also still making us realize that these are both people with spider powers. These are Spider-Men, 2 different versions of Spider-Man. Now for the part that I really want to talk about. The story. I want to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. The game has only been out for a week at this point, and I want to give everyone who hasn't gotten to it yet a chance to experience the story themselves without having it spoiled for them. So I will make a separate video on the story of this game that is full of spoilers, but for now, I'm going to keep it light and just talk about things I liked in the story. The first thing I wanted to say is that I love the relationship that Miles and Peter have that Insomniac did here. They introduced the 2 of them to each other in the 2018 game. They were still kind of feeling each other out, and Peter really was there for Miles in that hard time when his dad died, and Miles was there for Peter when Aunt May died. So they really were there for each other at really dark points in their life. And now I feel like we've come full circle with their relationship in Spider-Man 2 all these years later. Peter's trying to fill that mentor role for Miles, who looks to Peter for guidance. He goes to Peter for advice on something he feels conflicted on or confused about, and Peter definitely sees his younger self in Miles. He finds himself really astonished by how far Miles has come as Spider-Man and just as a person in such short a time. Because remember, this game is only set about 9 months after Miles' solo game, so he really hasn't had a lot of time as Spider-Man yet, maybe a year at most. And the 2 of them have such a deep-seated respect and camaraderie for each other that it actually puts comic versions of their relationship to shame, at least when it comes to them being emotionally vulnerable with each other. Everyone seems to be going through their own sort of character arc in this game. Miles is still trying to figure out the person that he wants to be. Does he want to be Spider-Man, the protector of New York? Or does he want to be that down-to-earth nice kid from Brooklyn that studies music technology and does cool tech experiments with his friend Genki? And that's the reason why I think Peter sees a lot of himself in Miles. He's very much at that age when he's still trying to figure it all out, when he's trying to compartmentalize being Spider-Man with still having an alter ego, with still having that daily life that's separate from being the hero. Miles is trying to figure out what being Spider-Man means to him, and more importantly, what being Miles means to him. He's still trying to find out who he is. Peter is at the point in his life when he's kind of taking on too much at once, which is a bit of a theme for him going throughout the story, which is not a unique situation for Spider-Man to be in, but this time it seems like it's at a real breaking point for him. A lot of things are in flux in his life right now. He's trying to get Mary Jane to move in with him, and there's a lot going on there. He's still very much burdened with the grief and the guilt of Aunt May's death that he really hasn't given himself time to heal from, and he knows something's got to give here. Then, as you've probably seen in the trailer, Harry Osborn shows up, and he's out of his coma, and he comes and sees MJ and Peter. I thought their relationship in particular was pretty well crafted too. They did a great job at making you believe the friendship between Peter and Harry and how they both have a really strong bond that's lasted for many years. One thing that I really didn't like though is they kind of didn't touch on the specifics of Harry and MJ's relationship. It's unclear if MJ and Harry dated like they did in the comics here, and we really don't get an answer if they did or not, or what was left there. And I really would have liked Insomniac to acknowledge what happened between the 2 of them there. Even if nothing happened at all, I would have at least liked to see something. But you can't have everything. Mary Jane, I thought, was really well written here. After years and years of seeing her in Spider-Man media where she's the typical damsel in distress archetype, it's so refreshing to see an MJ who is independent and can take care of herself even in a life-threatening situation. I also think the fact that instead of going with her standard career path as an actress and making her as a reporter for the Daily Bugle instead is a really tastefully done decision, and it makes sense within the context of the world that Insomniac created. I also feel like not enough people are talking about this, but like Norman Osborn was really well done in this game. Insomniac gave us a Norman Osborn that is really nuanced and complex and not really an easy character to hate. We see that many of his decisions are motivated by Harry in ensuring his health and safety, like it was done in the comics. And it seemed like he was really trying to clean up his act from the whole Devil's Breath thing from the first game. The villains of this game are probably my favorite part of the entire thing. They were all insanely well done. First up is Kraven. I thought this was the most faithful and comic accurate version of Kraven we've seen in any adaptation of his story so far. And I thought it was a really smart choice to try putting a spin on the Last Hunt story arc. I mean, there's a reason why it's cited as one of the best Spider-Man stories of all time. And Insomniac did a really good job of adapting that story. And I'm only going to talk about him briefly to avoid any spoilers, because it's really hard to talk about this game without getting into spoilers when you're talking about the story of it. But I've got to talk about Venom. Venom was probably my favorite part of this entire game. The imposing nature of him was felt in spades. He's like 15 feet tall, and the way he speaks and the tone he uses when he talks just always manages to send chills up my spine. And a lot of that can be chalked up to Tony Todd as the voice actor for Venom, and I just gotta say, I don't think Insomniac could have chosen a better person to cast for that role. The writing of his dialogue and the batshit crazy things you see him do in this game just kept me at the edge of my seat until I saw the credits roll. Insomniac Games has also implied that a potential Venom spin-off game might be in the works as well. And Insomniac, if you're watching this, if you give me 19 inches of Venom in a Venom solo game, I will tattoo your logo on my body. A Venom game where you play as this version of Venom is now at the top of my video game wishlist. That and the Wolverine game that Insomniac is working on as well. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 really did what I thought was impossible, and they surpassed their predecessor, Spider-Man 2018, in every conceivable way, from gameplay to narrative. And as someone who really does love Spider-Man dearly, it fills me with joy that we can still get an insanely good Spider-Man story like this. Like the title of the video said, this game is a love letter to every Spider-Man fan out there and to the character as a whole and what it means to be Spider-Man. And knowing that there's a whole community of fans out there just like me who love this character so much and want to see a faithful adaptation such as this really makes me believe that Spider-Man is a character like no other. One that is timeless, infinitely relatable, and one that continues to be the best of all of us. And I don't think there's anything more I need to say. I think you really should go out and buy this game. It's definitely my game of the year, and maybe it's yours too. So give it a shot. I should make more Spider-Man content here on this channel. I don't talk about Spider-Man enough. That's all for this video, guys. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts about this game. Did you love it? Hate it? Didn't play it yet? I want to know. Also, if you want me to make more Spider-Man content in the future, let me know that down in the comments as well. If you like this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe. We publish brand new content every day, so there's always something new for you to watch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.